This video has been several years in the making, where I'm going to finally rebuild my first ever PC, or as close as I can get to it. In 1997, my parents bought a new PC, which was a Compaq Presario 4834. They'd had a PC before that, which was an Ambrose printer, which was a 486 based machine. However, I was a bit too young to really use that, and I can't really remember using it that much when they had it. The Compaq was a machine I distinctly remember using a lot when I was growing up, and in 2003, when they bought a new machine, which was some Pentium II based HP machine, I was given the Compaq as my own PC in my bedroom. And I have strong memories using that machine, and it was definitely the machine that got me properly into working with computers. However, in probably about 2006, I replaced the machine with a new one, and the Compaq was gotten rid of. So unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. And since then, I've desperately wanted to be able to build one and get something as close as I can get to it. Unfortunately, it seemed quite elusive. Getting all the parts for it, or even just getting a 4834, has been seemingly impossible. They don't seem to have ever been that common machines, and it's not like they were sold to big businesses, so we'll be sending them to Proprietary recycling companies who will sell them on. They were just sort of home machines that probably just got chucked out in recycling centres and never really got sold on. So there's not that many available nowadays. I've had eBay alerts set up for many years, just alerting me to any parts coming available, and I've slowly accumulated all the bits to be able to build this. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at all the parts I've got and how we're going to build this machine. So now, while I haven't been able to find the 4834, I did however find this model, which is the 4814. This is from the same product line, and externally it's absolutely identical. The only difference is that this is a lower end machine and has a Pentium MMX chip, as opposed to this Pentium II that I had in my machine. So even though it's not exactly what I had, it's the closest I found to be available online. So as soon as this popped up, I just grabbed it instantly. I had to pay a total of $167 to import this from the US, but I didn't care, I just needed the machine because it was the closest I've seen to it. And I thought, well, that'll be fine, I'll cope with it. Yeah, sure, it's a completely different processor, but it's similar enough, it'll do. But then, shortly after buying this, a motherboard became available on eBay. And that's this board here. Now this is a motherboard out of the Compaq Presario 4840. That was a higher end machine than mine. However, it had a Pentium II processor. And looking at the sort of Compaq data sheets, the board that was used in the Pentium II machines, including the 4840 and my 4834, were identical. So this board would be the same as I had in my 4834. So I grabbed this, and this was only about $30 to import, so it wasn't as bad. The idea now is that I can fit this board into the 4814 and effectively turn it into a 4834. So the only real incorrect part will be the sticker on the front saying the wrong model number, and I think I can cope with that difference. There's then a few other parts I had to buy, so we'll go and take a look at those. So as I mentioned before, here we have the Pentium II motherboard for the 4800 series Compaqs. So to go along with that, we need some more parts. So firstly, we need a processor. So here it is. Here is a Pentium II 266 Megahertz. And obviously it's a slot processor. It's a fairly standard chip, obviously. You probably may have seen these before, but that's it there in the slot package, with that sticker on there showing the sort of die print, which always looks pretty cool on these chips. See on the top there, it's the model number SL265. And then it's got the integrated heatsink on the back. So that's the processor. And of course that's a fairly standard part, it's not Compaq specific, so it was actually pretty cheap to find, so that wasn't too bad, I didn't have to import this or anything. So there's our chip. The next part we need is the RAM. Now I know off the top of my head that my machine had 64 megs of RAM. However, this is back from before I used to work on machines, so I never actually really saw inside it, so I don't know what configuration of RAM sticks I had. I'm also not even sure if it originally had 64 meg or if that was upgraded later. So it could have probably had maybe a pair of 32 meg sticks, or maybe a pair of 16 meg sticks and then a 32 meg stick. I don't really know. So because I don't know, I'm not going to go out and try and find exact matching sticks of RAM. Instead, I've already had this 64 meg stick spare, which is just PC66 memory, so I'll just chuck this in. It's not exactly what I would have had, but it's close enough and it's the right capacity. I can't use the RAM out of the 4814, as the 4814's board uses EDO memory, whereas this uses standard SDRAM, so the RAM isn't compatible between the two models. So yep, that's the PC66 64 meg stick of RAM. The next component we need is the hard drive. Now I actually have this one, which is my original drive from my Compaq. I took it out when we got rid of the machine. And this is a 6.4 gig Samsung IDE disk. Now if you're really observant, you'll notice the date code on this comes from 1998, and not 1997 when the machine was made. The machine originally would have come with a 5¼ inch Quantum Bigfoot hard drive, which was still 6.4 gig, but it was a massive 5.25-inch drive. Unfortunately, due to an incident involving my mum and the voltage selection switch on the back of the machine, the original hard drive and power supply died and had to be replaced, so that's why this drive's newer, because it was replaced into the machine. Now this drive hasn't really been used since I took it out of that machine, so it's like a time capsule of all my old stuff. So I don't really want to go booting it up, because if I boot it up and then install different software and try things, I'll start changing it from how it was, and this is exactly how the machine was left when I stopped using it in 2006. So what I've done is I've gone out and bought another drive, which is here, and it's practically identical. It's the exact same model, the only difference is this has DLL on the end, which I'm guessing is just like a Dell OEM part. Other than that, it's identical. It's even made in the exact same month and year. Now, years ago I took an image of this drive, so what I'm going to do is restore that image onto this new disk, and I'll use this drive in the machine rather than risking using my original one. So it's the exact same model with the exact same data on it. I'll be booting it up exactly as it was when I left the machine. I'm just not using the original part. The next part we'll be fitting is my old CD writer. Now I got this put into the machine as well because the original slot loading drive in the machine started acting up, it kept eating disks and wouldn't eject them. And I really wanted a CD writer as well. I was so happy when I got this. I still remember, me as a kid being so excited having a CD burner, and I burnt absolutely everything I could to disk. I absolutely loved having this thing. And I've still got the drive, so I'm going to be putting this original drive back in. This is the original part I had. As you can see, it dates back from November 2003, which is when I would have had it installed. And yes, back then I would have had things installed. We used to take the machine into a shop and get a guy to put them in, because this was way before me working on my own hardware. So these were installed by someone else. And now for the final, most elusive part of all, we have the graphics card. Back when I had this machine, I never really ran games. However, there's a few sort of kids' educational games that I used to play, one of which had quite an intensive 3D driving part of it that the onboard graphics on the machine just couldn't cope with. I can remember playing it when we got it, and you would be able to drive around okay, but as soon as there was any sound in the game, the sound would just completely break up. The machine just couldn't cope with it. So they got the graphics card upgraded. And the graphics card it was upgraded to was a 3DFX Voodoo 3. Unfortunately, that card went away with the machine, and I thought, oh, it's fine, I'll just buy one, they can't be that hard to find. Turns out the Voodoo 3s have become quite a collector's item, and therefore are ridiculously expensive on eBay. You can find them quite easily, but some of them sell for well over £100. I don't want to spend that on a card. And the problem is, in my machine, it didn't have an AGP slot, it was PCI only. So I have to get a PCI version of the Voodoo 3, not an AGP one. So that limits my choices even more. Like with all these parts, I've had eBay alerts set up for quite a while, and finally saw one that was listed for £50, buy it now, and I bought it instantly. I think the listing had been up for maybe 5 minutes by the time I'd bought it, and that's the card here. So it was 50 quid, which still seems like quite a lot of money for such an old card, but the Voodoo 3s have become really expensive, and the PCI ones are even rarer. But that's the card there, so you can see there is the heatsink on there, which is completely squint, but sure, it's fine, with a single VGA port on the back. And that was the card I had. Now, I don't know exactly what version of the Voodoo 3 I had. It could have been the 2000 or it could have been the 3000. Now, I'm guessing, now this is a 2000, which is, I'm guessing what I would have had, because we wouldn't have gone for the top end one. But it's close enough. The only difference between the models is like clock speed, so realistically the 2000 is close enough. And it does ring a vague bell seeing Voodoo 3 2000 come up on the post screen when the machine started. So yep, that is my graphics card. So it's been a bit of a pain trying to find one of these, but thankfully I finally found one. And it was with that graphics card that I finally had all the parts to be able to complete this project. So there you go, that's all the original parts. We have the Pentium II motherboard, Pentium II processor, 64 megs of RAM, 6.4 gig hard drive, CD writer drive, and 3DFX Voodoo 3 graphics card. I've also dug out a few of my original accessories that I'll be using for this project. So we have the original Compaq keyboard and mouse that for some reason I've held on to, I don't know why, but they're absolutely filthy and they're good clean, but we've got the original PS2 keyboard and mouse. We've also got my original speakers that I bought, which were the, I think, a Creative iTrieg 2200s. I distinctly remember going into PC World, saving up lots of money, going into PC World and buying these, so I was very excited to buy those, and I've still got those. And we've also got my original monitor, which is a Compaq FP5315. The monitor was bought when I was given the machine to have in my bedroom. It originally had this big CRT monitor, and that wouldn't fit on my desk. My desk in my parents' house had a sort of sloped roof above it, so you couldn't fit a big CRT monitor. So when they gave me the machine, we went out to PC World and picked this monitor up. So it was pretty expensive back then. I mean, it was a good couple £100 I think it would have been for this 1024 by 768 15-inch LCD monitor. So that was the monitor I used to use, and I kept this monitor for a very long time. I used it for far too long, but it worked absolutely fine. So I've still got that, so that'll be going along with the project as well. So I've still got a lot of the original accessories that I would have used back then. So now before we get on with the build, let's take a look at the machine as it is. So overall it's not in too bad condition. It's got a few scuffs on it and it really needs a good clean, but it's all here. Now this machine was always very distinctive, that's what I always remember about it. It wasn't just a boring beige tower like all PCs from the day were. It's still a bit of a beige tower, but it had this weird sort of spaceship-like shape with all these sort of shortcut buttons on the top, and what you can probably make out is along the top here there's these slots. Now this was back from the day where having a CD drive was a big deal. So these were like slots you could store your CD cases in. It just had all these weird quirks to make this feel like a very sort of late 90s multimedia PC. The only real issue with it at all is this door where it's missing a piece. So that door covers the drives. However, the original machine had a sort of darkened, tinted, clear plastic piece along the top here and in this gap here. However, it's missing on this machine. That's slightly annoying because it did look quite cool, and I am keeping an eye out on eBay to see if a new door ever comes up. However, it's not a huge deal. In my machine I had that slot loading CD writer, and that meant this door wouldn't actually fit over it, so on my machine I had this door completely removed. So it's not the end of the world for making a machine that was accurate to how I had it. However, it's just a little bit annoying not having it there. So here we can see at the top of the machine we have all these buttons. So there's the power button, and then a sun symbol that indicates the machine's on when it lights up, and this moon symbol that indicated the machine was in standby, and you could press that to toggle between the two states. There's then a sort of hard drive indicator here, which you probably can't really make out. You'll see it when it's on. And then along here there's various shortcut buttons for multimedia functions, because back then multimedia was a big deal. So you've got play, pause, stop, fast forward and rewind, or next track, previous track that would be. Along the left here you've got all the buttons to do with the modem. So you've got a sort of quick launch icon that opens some Compaq software, a button to open a web browser, and then a phone button, and what looks like some sort of phone memo button. A big feature of this machine that was pushed was the fact it had a built-in modem you could use for phone services. So not only using it for the internet, you could use this machine as an answering machine, or even as a regular phone. So that's what these buttons were for there, and there was loads of bundled software that would make use of that. Below all those buttons, you can see we have some RCA jacks. These are actually for video capture. This machine has analog video capture capabilities. So you can plug your camcorder or whatever device you had into here, capture video off of it, and then sort of edit the video. I never used that, I could never get it working. I think there was some driver issue with it, I just could never actually get it to see any video from that device, but the hardware is there for it. Below that we then have a 24x slot loading CD drive. This is the same sort of drive I had in my machine originally, and then replaced it with that CD writer when the drive started acting up. But that is the original slot loading CD drive. It's just CD-ROM, not DVD or writer or anything like that. The higher end 4840 that the motherboard's from would have had a DVD-ROM drive, but this just has the basic CD-ROM. Below that we have a Zip 100 drive. This is different from my machine, mine didn't actually have a zip drive, all I had was just a blanking plate here. So it's a little bit annoying having that because it's not exactly what I had, but it's close enough. So this machine does have a zip drive, my one didn't. Below that we then just have a standard 1.44 meg floppy drive. Towards the bottom of the machine we have this Compaq Presario logo, the model number, which in this case is the 4814, so that will be slightly inaccurate, and then the Pentium MMX sticker, which will also be slightly inaccurate to what I had. I might try and find a Pentium II one on eBay if it shows up, but it's close enough, that's fine. So that's the front of the machine. So now here we are looking at the back of the machine where we have the power supply and then all the I/O. I/O wise, we have the audio here, it's got onboard audio, two PS2 ports, two USB ports which were very new for this sort of era of machine, so they weren't really used that much. In fact, I can't really remember using the USB port until much later in this machine's life. You've then got a 9-pin serial port, 25-pin parallel port, VGA port for the onboard graphics, your dial-up modem on a expansion card, and then your game port which you could use to connect joysticks. Now one thing that's interesting with this is how the I/O isn't really a standard form factor motherboard. It's not like you have your standard I/O shield like you'd have with an ATX board. It's this much more unusual style where it sort of roots down the side here, it's the whole height of the machine, and then the cards are on a riser. It's a completely proprietary form factor for this system. The other thing with this is this was back from the days of where they wanted to make PCs really easy to use for people, because not everyone had PCs, it wasn't that commonplace to know how to connect one up, so everything was very colour coded. The PS2 connectors on the keyboard and mouse were coloured green and orange to match these ports, and even the cables for the supplied speakers and microphone were all colour coded to show you exactly where to plug everything in. It was just designed to make it a lot easier for beginners to connect this machine up. So now before we dismantle it, let's fire this up just to check it all works. So we've just hooked up a keyboard and monitor. It's not got a disk or anything in it, so it won't actually boot, but we'll just see if it runs. So turn on the power. Booting up. That optical drive doesn't sound good at all. I'm guessing the optical drive's failed, but as you can see, it is now booting up on the monitor, so it's doing a RAM check. Chances are, I mean, my optical drive started acting up in like 2003, so I imagine this one's just completely dead. It'll be all the belts inside will have just completely perished, so that'll be the problem. It would be repairable if I took it apart and replaced the belts, but I'm replacing the drive anyway. So you can see it's now got 32 megs of RAM, that's the original EDO memory, and it's reporting system options not set. That'll be because the CMOS battery will be dead. Again, it's not too bad because I'm replacing the whole board. But as you can see, it has come on, it's detected the optical drive, it's detected all the RAM, so the machine is sort of alive anyway. We'll drop into the BIOS and see if it has a setup utility, which it does, so we can pick language, flick through that. So the machine does seem to be working. Obviously this is not the Pentium II board, this is still the older Pentium MMX board, but at least we can see here that given that it's now in the BIOS, it shows that the power supply is working, and it shows that the front panel here and all that stuff, all the stuff that we need to work in the new machine, out of this old one, is still working. So that's a pretty good sign. So the next stage will be to power this all off, take it apart, and start the build. So now let's get inside the machine. The side panel's held on with 3 Torx screws. It's pretty interesting using Torx, but it's something that Compaq always used to do, and they still seem to do it. Like now HP in the enterprise space use Torx screws in all their stuff. Although I think it is just because they want to use Torx screws because they're nice screws to work with. As you can see, they are slotted as well, so it's not like they're using it to keep people out, because you can still use a slot screwdriver, but it's just Torx. If you have a Torx screwdriver, you can use Torx with it, which is a lot. I don't mind that, I quite like that. So we take these 3 screws out, we'll be able to get inside and see how the machine's laid out. Now, as I mentioned before, when I used this machine, I never really used it. I never really took it apart. This was before I started working on hardware. So I've seen inside it briefly, but I've not actually really dug into this sort of machine in any detail. So it's a completely sort of new style of machine to me. I've never seen a machine of this form factor before. Now those screws are out, we can take the top off, so that slides off. The other problem with this actually is that shaped front panel means that when you lay it on its side, it's really unstable. You can't like lie it flat, which is a bit annoying. But yeah, that's side panel. Side panel just lifts off like that. So now let's take a look at the inside of the system. So I've now stood the machine up just to make it a bit easier to get inside. But as you can see, there's not really that much access. That's because it has this giant big expansion card riser board. So this is removable. You can just slide it out, you sort of pull it, there's no screws holding it in, and that'll slide out. And that now reveals the expansion card riser. Now, as you can see in there, we've only got the one card at the moment, which is the modem, and that is plugged into the 16-bit ISA slot. It's a bit interesting using an ISA modem in this, given ISA was pretty outdated at this point, although for a modem it works fine, I suppose. So as you can see, we've got 4 ISA slots, and then 3 PCI slots in the middle. So all I'll be installing into this is the graphics card, which will go into one of those PCI slots. And that then goes down into the motherboard. So that's how they sort of laid the system out with his riser board. It's a bit interesting, but I suppose it works. And this thing's also really heavy. Now with that riser board out of the way, we get a bit more access inside. What it'll also do, it'll just take the hard drive cage out just to make it give us even more access, and that's located here. Now as you can see, it's both allows the 5 1/4 inch drive, the Bigfoot drive, to be mounted, filling this whole thing, and then it has these 4 smaller screw holes here which you can use to mount a 3 1/2 inch drive, which is what I'll be doing. This is just held in with a single Torx screw on the back, that'll just come out. And then this should just come out somehow. There we go. And now that's removed, we've now got full access to the inside of the machine to see how it's laid out. Now we're inside the machine, we can see the layout. Up here we have the power supply which connects to all the parts. We've then got the optical drive, zip drive and floppy drive located over here. And then this is where the hard drive would have been connected over these 2 cables here. Obviously the recycling company would have just pulled the hard drive out, so the cables are just left dangling there. Underneath you can see the motherboard. We'll take a look at the motherboard in more detail once it's out the case, But over here we can see the processor under this heatsink, the single stick of RAM here, there's two different slots. There's a stick of cache memory here you might be able to see, as well as the riser card, and then down here is the onboard S3 graphics. This large cable here is then connected to those analog video inputs on the front of the machine. They come down this cable and connect to the motherboard here, and then there's various chips here that are used to connect to supply the analog video capabilities. So what we'll now do is remove all the cabling and get the board out. Now, one thing I find quite interesting about this machine is the way the power supply is connected. As you can see here, it's got these three connectors, which are sort of like the old AT style, although the pinout's different, and it's got this additional one here. So I'd be interested to know if this is actually a standard, like was this just a standard of power supply that was very seldom sold, or is it a sort of completely proprietary power supply for the system? But yep, the power supply connects over those three connectors there into the motherboard. That's pretty much all the cables removed. The only ones I can see that we need to still get out are this one here, this ribbon here that goes to the front panel. That'll just lift out. It's got a lot of pins in it because of all those buttons. And then finally this one here, which is connected up to the CD-ROM drive for the CD audio functionality that you always used to use in these machines back in the day, where you'd have a dedicated cable going from your CD-ROM drive to your sound card, or in this case the motherboard, to provide the audio if you're playing audio CDs back. Definitely not something you see nowadays. Now that we've removed all those cables, we can now get the board out. So it's just held in with six, maybe 7 Torx screws. So you take all the screws out and get the board out. It's definitely really annoying how this case just doesn't lie flat, because you can't actually put pressure on the screws because it'll just tip the whole thing. It's a bit of a stupid design, but oh well, that's obviously the price you pay for making it look fancy, is just making it a bit of a pain to work on. And this machine's definitely not designed to really be that user serviceable, like with all the proprietary parts and stuff. It's very much designed as a sort of basic home multimedia PC, not something that you're meant to work on extensively. Oh, there's one more cable I forgot about. There's the cable that connects up that game port to the motherboard, so we just need to unplug that as well. And now, in theory, this board should now just hopefully come out. Yep, there we go. What's it called? There we go. And that's now the original Pentium MMX board out. So what we'll do before we go any further is we'll go in and take a closer look at this board. So now here we have the 4814's original Pentium MMX board. And as you can see, it's a completely proprietary layout. Over here we have the I/O up the whole side of the board. Up here is the connection for the power supply, 2 IDE channels, and then an additional floppy drive port. Another power supply connection there. And then the only slot we have on the motherboard is this large one that goes to that riser card. And this carries both ISA and PCI. Down in this region we can see the onboard video, which is the S3 Trio. And then there's also these 2 chips of video memory here. That BT chip there, that's for the video capture, and that's where the capture card connects onto that header there. So it connects in there, and then that handles video capture. And now over here we have the processor and RAM. So down here we have the RAM. There's a single stick of EDO memory in here. And as you can see, that's there. It's an HYM 7V64200 from Hyundai. Now interestingly, this is a 16 meg stick, not the 32 megs that's reported by the machine. And that's because down here you've actually got 16 megs of onboard memory. It's a pretty interesting design. Don't know why they really did that. Don't know why they didn't just, put a 32 meg stick in or use 2 sticks. But it's just, that's how they've done it. Also interestingly, the 4840's motherboard, the new motherboard I'm putting in, doesn't have any onboard memory. You have to add sticks to have it work. But this one has a 16 meg stick and then 16 megs on board. Next up here is another stick. This is the CPU's cache memory. So this is from before the days where you'd have the CPU cache on the chip itself. In this machine, it's actually a separate stick, which is quite solidly seated in its socket. There we go, that's coming out. And that is your CPU's cache memory. There's a model number for it there. And that's why the Pentium II chip is in such a large slot package, and that's why they started doing the slot processors, is with those they could put the CPU on and then put the cache memory alongside it as separate discrete chips. Because this is a socketed CPU, it's socket 7, the cache memory has to be on a separate stick because they can't fit the cache memory onto the CPU itself. So that's what that stick is there. Now finally, under this heatsink we have the processor, so we may as well take a look at it. So we'll just pop the heatsink off, and that will just come off hopefully. That's caught on there. There we go, and that will just hopefully lift off. There we go. Now that heat, there's a thermal paste, which is obviously not remotely dried up on this. That's because I had to actually replace it. When I got the machine, there was a weird rattling noise inside, so I opened it up, and turns out that in transit this heatsink had somehow become completely dislodged and was bouncing around inside the case. I'm amazed it hasn't damaged anything or broken any traces or anything on the motherboard, because it was properly bouncing around while it was shipped from the States. But yeah, I had to put new thermal paste on, then refit the heatsink. So what we'll do is we'll clean that off and take a look at the processor itself. So we'll give the chip a little clean off, and we'll see what's under it. There you go, you can see the original branding. So there you can see it says Intel Pentium MMX with MMX Tech. Or, sorry, Intel Pentium with MMX Tech is what it says. Let's socket up and get it out. And that's it there. So that's the original Pentium MMX chip this machine had. If you look underneath as well, you can see there's the socket 7 pins. And in the middle there's more information about the chip. There's the socket 7 socket there. So yep, that's the old CPU. Obviously we're not using any of this board, all this is now spare, but that's the original Pentium MMX board here. So here we have the new Pentium II board we'll be using. As you can see, the layout's fairly similar, with all the ports, the drives up here, the connection for the power supply over here, and then the big riser slot, as well as the I/O down the back. It's very similar. However, down here you can see we've got a similar layout for graphics. However, this uses the ATI 3D Rage Pro. Now this is slightly different from my machine. Mine still use the S3 onboard graphics. However, this doesn't seem to be a difference between models of machine, it just seems to be a generational difference. So it looks like the earlier machines maybe included the S3 graphics, and then later on they replaced it with the ATI Rage. So it's not like it's a different model, it's just a different, almost like a different age of model. This isn't too big a deal because I will be fitting the 3DFX card anyway. One thing that this has that the other board doesn't have is it also has expandable video memory. Via these two connectors here, you could get a separate daughter board that would slot down on top of that and give you more video memory. Of course, I'm not going to be using that because, well, I'm not using the onboard graphics. And as before, we have the connection for the video capture card and the BT chip doing the video capture. So now let's fit the processor and RAM. So first of all we'll do the RAM because that's the most boring one. We've got the 3 slots here which take standard PC SDRAM. So we've got a stick here, so let's just chuck that in. It's definitely not very exciting, but put that in anyway. And there we go. Next up we need to fit the processor, so we have that here. There's the slot 1 Pentium II, and there's the slot 1 on the motherboard. So we do just drop that down, push it in, and flip the wee locks out. That's the processor now fitted, so that motherboard is now ready to go in the case. So there we go. So now let's get this board put back in the case, connect it all up, and then continue with the build. So now we need to fit the board and connect it up, and this is where we really hope that there's no differences in the case between the two models and the board doesn't fit. So hopefully this all fits. Looks like it should. So we're going to try and get this board in. It's a bit tricky to sort of angle it into this machine because of the weird layout, and that cable's now going to go under it. There we go. So we just get this board in position, and that there. Hopefully all the connectors fit through the back. Yep, there we go. The rear arrow does match up, thankfully. That would have been a problem if not. And now we just need to screw it in with those 7 screws. Now I've just noticed one slight flaw, where the processor covers one of the screw holes. Didn't really think when I put it in, so I'll need to pull that out again, put the screw in, and then bring the slot of chip back in again. Didn't really expect that. It's obviously a bit different to modern machines where you generally put the processor in before you put the board in the case, but obviously the big slot processors tend to cover things up, so it makes sense to just put the final screw in there, and then shut the CPU back in. At least these slot processors are so much quicker to install than socketed ones. Just drop it in, and that's it in, like that. Now the board's in, it should just be a simple case connecting all the cables up, so just game port connects there, front panel connection should just go in there somewhere. Bit fiddly to get in there compared to on the old board, but whatever. Yeah, that just goes in there. There's definitely way more power regulation around this Pentium II compared to the Pentium I board. The other good thing with this actually is how good all the capacitors look. There's absolutely no bulging caps, nothing leaking out. They actually look really good condition, which is good. I was a bit concerned buying such an old board that there might be problems. Just need to connect the CD-ROM audio cable to that header there. Is that it? Ah, it's this header under here. Don't know what that one's for. Then we just need to connect power supply to the motherboard over these three connectors. We need to connect up the video capture, so that's this big long cable here, which just route round a bit neater. And that routes around the whole case like that, and plugs into the motherboard over here. And there's a little clip that can be clipped in to keep it neat. So that's that big the video capture cable. IDE cables, so the one for the optical drive I'll put in the second channel. The one for the hard drive I'll put in and just leave it dangling for now. Oh, how's that not going in? That wrong way around. Oops. That should just go in there. And then finally the floppy drive cable can go in the bottom one. Okay, so that's all the cables now installed. What I'll do next quickly is I'll fit that CD writer, just because I may as well do it while I'm in here. And then it should just be a case of putting the graphics card in, connecting up the hard drive, and then firing it up. So now we just need to fit the optical drive. I've just taken the door off, it just unhooks. Just get it out of the way, because we don't really want it on the machine. And then there's just two Torx screws to take the drive out. I think there's just screws on this one side, then it should just slide out. We don't need to take the other side off, hopefully. There we go. Yep, and that's released the drive. So 3 cables in the back to get out. Power, there, IDE data, and then the CD-ROM audio cable needs to come out. And there's the original slot loading optical drive that obviously isn't working very well. There's some information on the top, might get a manufacturer from that or something. That's Panasonic. Yeah, so that's the original optical drive. There's the back of it. And I've got the new one to put in. Now I'm going to need to take the jumper off this one because the new one's missing a jumper for some reason. I've obviously nicked it over the years. So I'll take the jumper off, which, yeah, it was in the leftmost position, so that's cable select it was set to, which HP and Compaq tended to use on these machines. And then got a new one here, so I'll put it on cable select mode as well, which is the leftmost one as well, so pretty easy, just chuck that on there. Always forget that I have to use jumpers on such old drives. Just never really used stuff this old, so I keep forgetting about it. But that's that now set to cable select mode, so I just need to slot the drive in and connect it up. And then I have my original Samsung CD writer in this. Cool, now that's in, it's just a case of connecting it up, so audio cable can go in, IDE ribbon cable can go in, and then the power cable. And there we go, we've now fitted my CD writer drive, so there you go, you can see it there. That's now my original CD writer installed. Next we want to fit the graphics card, so here we have the riser board, and we've got the card here to install. So this will need to go into one of the PCI slots. If I remember correctly, when I had my machine, the graphics card was sort of as close as it could be to the modem. It was right towards the edge here. So I'm going to put it in the slot directly next to the modem. This is one of those sort of combo slots they used to have where it's either ISA or PCI. So if you put a PCI card in or an ISA card, you can only fit one at a time and it'll share the same back plate. So we put it into this slot here, which is, we'll use this back plate here. So we just remove the blanking plate, which at least on this machine is thankfully screwed in and isn't one of those stupid ones you have to break out. Should just be able to fit the graphics card. So that'll come out. Card should just slot in. There we go, quite a stiff slot. And then just screw it in. And that there is now the Voodoo 3 installed, so that's the card sitting in there with the VGA port sticking out the back. So now all we really need to do is just slot this down into the case. So make sure we don't catch any cables under it, and that'll just slot down like that, and then push into the slot on the motherboard. And we now have a graphics card, so if you look around the back of the case, we can see there, there's the VGA port. Finally, we just need to fit the hard drive. So we've got the drive here, that's the new one I'll be putting in, that's the same as my old one. And then we've got the bracket, so I'm trying to think how this goes. So the bracket fits that way, so I want the connectors to be towards the bottom of the bracket, so I want to fit the drive in there so it fits like that with the connectors there. So we just need to shut those 4 screws in, and then that'll be the hard drive mounted. And obviously you can see on the side there, there's where the original Bigfoot hard drive would have fitted. And actually, come to think of it, by the looks of that, you could have probably fitted both a Bigfoot drive and your 3.5-inch drive. You could have actually had 2 hard drives in this machine potentially. And there is actually a spare connection on the power supply for that if you wanted to. So it's got at least some very limited expansion potential. Okay, so that's the drive now installed in its caddy. So it should now just be a case of sort of hook that into that slot there, let the drive fold flat, connect up the 2 cables. So there's the IDE data cable, which all the way up for that one, connects in there, and then the Molex power as well. That drive will just go flat, and that's the hard drive installed. There's now just that one torque screw that needs to be put into the back here to hold that in place. So now all the hardware's been fitted, it's time to boot it up. I've disconnected the hard drive because I want to make sure everything's working before I do the final boot. So I'm just going to start it up off of this Windows 98 DOS boot disk. So I'll shut that in there just now. Fire it up and see if it all works. So I've got the keyboard and monitor connected. I've not connected the mouse because I'm not using Windows yet. And I've connected the monitor onto the 3DFX Voodoo 3 card rather than the onboard graphics. So if the monitor comes up, we know that that graphics card works, as well as hopefully the rest of the hardware. So we'll boot it up and see if it runs. So I think this machine tends to turn itself on when you apply mains power, so I'll switch the socket on and see if it starts. Yep, there we go. Let's now the moment of truth is, does the monitor come up? Oh, yep, that was a Voodoo 3 BIOS screen coming up. And we're at the Compaq logo, so the machine seems to be working, which is quite nice. Let's see if it'll boot that floppy. Yep, so it's full in configuration, automatically updated, that's good. So just press save changes and we'll continue. Nope, so it's now rebooting. Probably a dead CMOS battery, might need to replace that. So that's the Voodoo 3 card showing up again. Compaq logo. Seeking the floppy drive. Ah, well that's a problem. It's maybe not hugely easy to make out, but a message has come up saying, fan not present, system halted. Now when I was in there, I did notice there was a space on the front of the case for a sort of 80mm looking fan, and it wasn't fitted. I'd be willing to bet that the Pentium MMX system didn't need that fan, but because I've now got a Pentium II, the Pentium II system's probably included a fan in that position in order to cool the higher power processor, and obviously I've not got that fan. So what I'll need to do is I'll go away and try and figure out how I'm going to do that. I'll need to, first of all, find out where the fan connector is on that motherboard, find an appropriate fan and connect it up, and hopefully it uses a fairly sensible, sane way of detecting the fan spinning and doesn't do anything weird or proprietary, because obviously this is an old machine. So I've got a bunch of spare 80mm fans, so hopefully I can find one of those and just chuck it in the machine that'll work. So I'll go away, figure it out, and see if I can get the machine to go past this stage, and then I'll come back. So I've now figured out how the fan system works on this machine. On the motherboard down here, you can see there's this 3-pin header. This is where the fan connects to. And I was able to look online and I finally found a picture of the original fan from this that showed the connector, so I was able to figure out what the pinout was. And the way it works is this pin furthest to the side here is the negative. The next one along, there's a gap in the middle. The next one along is positive. And then the final one is a third wire coming from the fan, which is just an unlabeled white wire. So what I did is I just grabbed a spare 3-pin PC fan and hooked it up. So I hooked up the positive and negative, and then hooked up the third speed sensor wire to this pin here. And then I started getting weird behaviour. Sometimes when I turned it on, it would pass the fan check and boot up. Well, it would pass post and start fine. Other times, it would say the fan wasn't present. I dug a little bit deeper and looked up the datasheet for the original fan this comes with. And it turns out that this isn't actually a speed sensor wire, it's what they call a rotation lock sensor. So whereas a modern PC fan has a speed sensor that pulses it twice per rotation to let the PC detect what speed the fan's running at, this system's a lot simpler. The original fan in this just has that extra wire, and all it does is output a signal to say whether the fan's spinning or not. If it outputs a low signal, the fan's spinning and that's fine. If it outputs a high signal, that would indicate that the fan's potentially locked up and causes the system to go into an alarm state. So that means a standard 3-pin PC fan can't be used because it doesn't. The third pin isn't usable for this signal. I dug around online looking for fans that had a rotation lock sensor, and there were quite a few, but they were quite hard to get. You know, they'd arrive in a couple of weeks. I wouldn't really have time to have them for this project. So instead I've bodged my own little solution, so we'll take a look at that now. So now here we have the solution I ended up coming up with. I picked up this fan here that I had spare, which is an Antec Tri-Cool. It's speed adjustable, which I don't really need, but it's the one I had. And the reason I picked this fan up is that it works reasonably well on 7.5 volts. It turns out that while this machine originally came with a 12 volt fan, the pin header runs at 7.5 volts, so it seems like they were deliberately undervolting the fan to run it slower and quieter. I tried various 80mm fans that I had spare, and this was the one that gave out the most airflow at that lower voltage. Some of them were just hilariously wimpy and barely moved any air at all, so this seemed like the safest option. Now, originally, because this is a case fan, not like a heatsink fan or anything, it just terminated in a standard 4-pin Molex connector. So what I've done to connect it to the header is I've chopped that off, cut the wires way shorter because they were far too long, and I've soldered on these 3 wires instead. And I've also heat shrunk them, so they're all quite neat. So what we've got here is we've got that pin there, that's the standard positive voltage supply, and then we've got these 2 here. Now this is my sort of bodgy solution. So what I've done instead of having an actual rotation lock sensor on the fan, I've just connected these 2 different pins onto the ground connection on the fan. One of these will go to the ground header on the motherboard and be the actual electrical ground for the fan. The other one will be connected to the rotation lock header. And what that'll do is it'll just constantly pull that to ground, which will just trick the motherboard into thinking the fan is saying that it's completely happy and it's definitely rotating. It does mean that there's now no rotation lock sensing on this fan, so if the fan did lock up, the motherboard wouldn't detect it. But to be honest, it's really unlikely. It's a decent enough fan, and I'm not going to be using this machine to a huge enough extent that that's really going to cause a problem. Ultimately, I might go online, and if I can find a fan cheap enough, I might buy an appropriate fan cheaply, but for now, this will do. So yeah, that's what we have there, just those 3 wires all neatly heat shrunk in, soldered together, and then all I need to do now is plug these 3 pins into the motherboard and screw the fan into the case. So there we go, I've now mounted the fan. I've just put it there, put it in the front of the case with 4 screws there, blowing air in, and then connected those 3 pins up to the motherboard there. So hopefully that'll work. So what we'll now need to do is put the case back together, connect it all up, and see if we get past that error. Okay, so the fan's now installed, so let's see if it works. I've left the hard drive at the machine again just because I want to make sure it's definitely working before I do the final boot. So I'm just going to start it up off this boot floppy again. So let's put that in and see if the machine now boots without showing that fan error message. We'll turn it on. That's the graphics card initializing. And we've got a Compaq logo, so hopefully it'll get through this post process and just boot without showing any errors about the fan. And I can hear the fan running in there. There definitely is some very slight, yeah, you can feel airflow, so there is air being moved through the machine, which is good, so the fan is actually running on that lower voltage. So hopefully it posts. Well, that's a good sign. Yep, and now seems to be booting up from that floppy, so yep, there we go. And if you tell it to boot, it's booting up. So obviously it's just booting off the floppy, we're not getting the full OS yet, and I need to put the hard drive in. But that fan now seems to be working, and the fan error has now gone, so that's a bit more progress. So all I need to do now is get that hard drive, put it in the machine, close the whole system up, and we'll do the first boot of my old Windows install. Okay, so now it's time for the moment of truth. I've taken that image of my old hard drive and written it to that new disk, put the disk in the machine, and now we're ready to turn it on and see if it works. I've also dug out the mouse and speakers just to hook the whole system up as I would have had it back in the day. So let's switch it on and see what happens. And this is the first time it's ever been booted, this image has ever been booted on this machine. Hard drive spinning up. Cool, so it's just detected the hard drive because the hard drive wasn't in it last time it was booted, so we'll press F1 and hopefully it should now come up. Oh, the hard drive's doing something. And we've got Windows. So yep, we're running Windows 98 SE on this. When we originally got the machine, it was running Windows 95. However, we later got it upgraded to Windows 98 SE, so that's what it's running now. See how long this takes to boot. I do remember back in the day, this machine was extremely slow, and obviously it's the same disk image because it was just full of so much junk that I installed, so it's not going to be a quick machine, but we'll see how long it takes to boot. That wasn't too bad actually. And we've got it. So it's not displaying at the full resolution, but it is showing something, and it's now giving me a list of users. Obviously back when I used this machine I discovered how to add multiple users to the machine, so I added lots of users. I think one of those would be one of my friends, and then like 3 of those was just me adding users for fun. So we'll just log in as first one and see what happens. Okay, so what it now seems to be doing is installing lots of drivers. It's not actually asking me for disks for any of them, it's just detecting them and asking me to, and just doing the install. I'm guessing it's maybe just because like serial numbers on parts have changed or something, and it just needs to reinstall or reinitialize them all. It is also possible that even though I didn't use this drive after it was taken out of the machine, I did have it slaved into my main desktop, so it's possible that I maybe accidentally booted it up once and that knackered the drivers a little bit. But it does seem to be installing them all, so we'll just need to wait and hopefully it'll just take a wee while and then hopefully they'll all install. And there we go, that's us now in Windows at the desktop. It's still starting up a bit, but the resolution isn't set completely correct, but hopefully I just need to change that and we can get it up and running. So what I'll do is I'll go away, fiddle about with it, come back and get the resolution set up, and then I'll come back when it's done. Oh, there we go, my HP printer is now wanting to update itself. Well, that printer's long gone, so don't need to do that. So I've tried changing the resolution and stuff, and that hasn't really helped. It just kept, it would do it, reboot the machine, and then come back to this state. So I'm going to try reinstalling the graphics drivers. I'm guessing it's either maybe when I've accidentally booted the drive in my new machine, it's knackered the drivers, or potentially this card's like a different BIOS revision to my one or whatever. So I'll just reinstall the drivers just to be safe. Big shout out to Phil's Computer Lab on YouTube, who has a huge selection of 3dfx driver downloads on his website. So I've downloaded all of those and stuck them on a CD so I can sit them in the machine. Because of course Windows 98 requires separate drivers if you want to use a flash drive, which I don't have installed on this, so that'll do for now. So we'll put that in. And hopefully these drivers work, or I'll have to burn yet another disk. So, yep, so here we're seeing all the drives. We've got the floppy drive as the A drive, the zip drive is the D drive, the C drive is also the hard drive. It's labelled disk 2 there, that would have been when it was slaved into my main PC, that it would have been called disk 2 to indicate that it wasn't my main boot drive. And then we've got the CD showing up there as drive A. So it's just, hopefully these drivers work. I've also just noticed I've got that weird Windows 98 thing where when you hover over a thing, it selects it and single click opens folders. That was always a weird one. So I've downloaded various versions and I've extracted 1.04, which I'll try first. This just seems like it was the newest version that felt like a sort of proper production release, didn't have any beta stuff in it. So we'll try this and see if it works. So run setup.exe and we'll see if the drivers install. Oh, there we go. Address, yes. Oh, installing. Proper retro installation experience here. This brings back a lot of memories of me sitting doing this for anything I wanted to install on this machine. Oh, I remember all this thing that all the installers used to have. But yep, that's it done. So let's reboot, and hopefully it'll come up now with the graphics drivers. Oh, that noise there. I remember that noise. Okay, so we're still not got the full resolution, but that is now running in full color space. So hopefully I just need to set the resolution to the right one and it'll work. So let's log in and see if we can do that. Cool, well, I mean, even just with those colours fixed, that looks significantly better. And we're now getting the sort of newer Windows 98 style icons here for like Recycle Bin, Network and My Computer. So we're definitely running in that better colour space. So once this thing boots, we can change the resolution. This is definitely something I don't miss with new machines. When you turn it on, have to just wait for hours for all the things in the system tray to load up before you can actually use the machine. We're definitely a bit spoiled a bit now. Definitely spoiled a bit nowadays with stuff that just works instantly. Oh yeah, we've got the Windows 98 gradients up here as well. That was something introduced with Windows 98. Before it just used to be a solid colour. Yep, so now we're getting that thing that programs used to always do when they installed. They'd always open up a directory showing various icons and files for that program after the installation was completed. Stuff doesn't do that nowadays. Maybe get rid of that. And that was the other thing with this machine, the noise that hard drive made. It was just so like loud and rumbly the whole time. Absolutely no shock mounting. Cool, well we're in now, so let's try and change the resolution. So, properties, settings. So yeah, we're high colour. I'll turn that up later, but let's try and do the resolution first. So we can put it up to 1024 by 768, apply. Oh, there we go. Yep, that's the full resolution. I'll now dare turn the colour up, see if we can get 32-bit colour. I don't know what this card's capable of. Try without restarting. Well, that seems to have worked. Yep, so we're now actually at the full resolution. So that is definitely working. So what I'll now do is I'll restart everything just to make sure we're completely good after all the driver installs. Dig around, see if I can find anything interesting on it. And I'll come back and show some stuff about this machine. Definitely very pleased with how well it's working so far. Okay, so I've had a quick dig around the machine and there's an absolute ton of really nostalgic stuff on this. That's really great. So what we'll do is we'll go and take a quick look. Obviously I won't go through all my files because it's stuff that, you know, I quite like myself, but it's probably incredibly boring to everyone else. But there's a few interesting things we'll take a look at. So it turns out the administrator user wasn't the user that all my stuff was under. That was actually under the Cameron user. So we'll log into that and take a look at what we find. Also interestingly, the resolution doesn't take effect on this login screen. It only takes effect once you've logged in. And different users have different resolutions. That's a bit of a weird decision, but yep, so if we log in here, we'll see what it looks like. And there we go. So this is back when Windows 98 had the sort of themes system, so you could set a theme for the whole machine. So this is the inside your computer theme. I remember I absolutely loved that, and that's why it does the different logon sound and has that different that desktop wallpaper. And you'll see when we open certain things, it'll do weird sounds or have different coloured icons because of this theme. For example, you can see the My Computer icons now changed to like a CPU, and the what other icons like Network Neighbour, who's now a sort of satellite dish. This was a thing that Windows 98 had, that let you pick a theme that would theme the entire system and skin it slightly. So that's us logging in. 3DFX once again insisting on popping up. Don't know why. Need to wait for this to finish. It's doing whatever it's doing. Okay, so I'll just get rid of that. It's being a pain, and we'll take a quick look. So you can see back when I was 11, I wasn't that organised at like naming files sensibly or putting them in a safe place. I just sort of chucked them all over the desktop. Oh, what's this doing? Modem stuff. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I just chucked files all over the desktop, naming them random things. So that was very organised. But there's already quite a lot of interesting stuff on here. There's WinZip, back when that was required, when you had to install WinZip. Loads of PowerPoint presentations I used to do, documents. That there, CGOS, that would be back when I was young. I used to make operating system style mock-up, like UI mock-ups in PowerPoint. So that's what that would be. Don't know what that is. To mum, to dad. Some letters or something written to my parents. Paint on my desktop, all that sort of stuff. Lots of very old, weird things here. Oh, and it's got Minesweeper, so I can probably confirm, yep, it can actually run Minesweeper before someone inevitably asks in the comments. So let's take a quick look at what we've got installed here. So let's see, we've got obviously the standard Windows accessories, color desk, and that is probably something to do with a scanner, to be honest. Compaq Multimedia. This is a big feature of this machine, is it had all these multimedia capability. So I can open this up using this batch file I made years ago that will start up all the appropriate software. And it had all these individual utilities for media playbacks. It had like MIDI player, audio CD player, wave player, all that, a sort of audio mixer. Very sort of classic stuff from back in the day, where they designed the UI to look like a physical hi-fi system. And I just remember this from back in the day. I absolutely love this software. I've used this all the time. You have this old wave player, got the MIDI player, which still works. And I can still remember all those tunes from that MIDI player. And the cool thing with that is that previously I'd been able to get files off this disk and look through some of the files, but these MIDI files, you can't, because they're played by the actual sound card hardware itself. You could try and play them on a different machine, but they would never sound exactly the same as they would when they're actually playing out the original Compaq machine with the original sound card. So it's really cool actually to be able to have the original hardware and hear those things again for whatever reason. But yeah, this is software I absolutely distinctly remember playing with, is all this multimedia playback software. You know, this CD player. I absolutely love this stuff. But we'll get out of that and take a look at what else we have. What else do we have on here? We have Compaq Phone Center. This was something I never used, but because this machine had a modem, and it was back from the days where a modem was a big deal, they really pushed telephony capabilities of this system. You could use it like an address book, or you could use it as an answering machine. You could have it connected to your phone line, have it act as an answering machine. You could actually make phone calls through the system, and that was a big feature they pushed with it. Now, we never used that, we just used a normal phone like a sensible person, but you could actually use that, and that was one of the big features they pushed, so that's what all that software is. Compaq Diagnostics. Intel Video Capture, that's for the analog video capture capabilities. It never worked when I used it, and I still can't get it working now, so there's probably a driver issue. It was probably when we upgraded to Windows 98 something broke, but one day I'll maybe get that working. SimCity 2000 Network Edition. Microsoft Works 4. QuickTime back when you needed that for things, that's a shame. Startup Utilities, Compaq Internet, Microsoft Money. Nero for burning CDs. Knowledge Adventure, that was for an old game called Adibu, which is actually the game that we had to get a 3DFX card put in for. I don't actually have, it's not installed right now, but I did find the disc for it, so I'll need to try that later. I do remember with this machine that the disk space was always really low, so I was always uninstalling software and reinstalling it, so there's not going to be that much currently installed because I had to always remove stuff if I wanted to install something different. More QuickTime. GL setup, that's probably OpenGL. Yeah, it's OpenGL. Microsoft Access, Excel, Binder, PowerPoint, Outlook. I had the whole Office 97 suite installed, so proper retro Microsoft Office here. With the, I've not got a clip here, I've got the wee superhero dog thing. Not the same as Word nowadays. Quick, let's get through this. So let's see. Microsoft Reference, so I've got Microsoft Encarta. The days before easy internet access, you'd have your encyclopedia installed on your machine. Nickelodeon stuff, that was for an old digital camera I had. Greetings Workshop, which was Microsoft's greeting card software, various other things. Scooby-Doo game, Serif software, Real Player, oh god, Stuart Little game, clip art, photo editor stuff, more ULEAD stuff, WinZip, Creative, I'll take a look at that in a second. Now this is fun, I've got Theme Park World installed, so I'm going to try, that's the only game I've found on the system so far, but I'm going to definitely try and get this running because there's probably old game saves in this and I absolutely loved Theme Park World back in the day. More software, DK Multimedia, Encyclopedia of Science, Oh, there's an old one for UK people, Free Serve Internet, which was our old dial-up ISP back in the day. And this is back where you'd install the dial-up ISP's disk on your machine that would put shortcuts all over the system and change various things to their branding because they wanted to put themselves all over your machine. My old printer. That's my old digital camera, the HP PhotoSmart camera. AOL, oh god. Internet Explorer, MSN 6.2, Microsoft Word. Open up IE, see what version we've got here. Let's get that. I think this is IE6. But as you can see up here, this is this is what the ISPs used to do back in the day. Where up here they would change it to like put their branding in, so Internet Explorer would say Microsoft Internet Explorer provided by FreeServe, and they change the little icon up here to their own logo. That's definitely something you don't get nowadays. Your ISP definitely doesn't do that, go near your machine to that extent nowadays. So yeah, that is a quick look at all the software installed. There's definitely loads of stuff on this. Now the other one I'm thinking of is that could be quite interesting, we've got Creative Media Source. Now this was for my old Creative MP3 player, which was, what was it again? It's like a V200 or something. Little 256 meg MP3 player, and this is the software you had to use to manage media on it. And you used to have to rip music off CDs and put the CD in the computer, rip a CD onto it, and then load it onto the MP3 player. This was back before I had easy access to broadband, so all my music had to come from CDs. Let's see if there's anything interesting in here. It's not a quick machine. Come on. Oh, there's the loading cursor as well, it's like a sort of PC with 1 and 0s going across the monitor. Oh, there we go. Oh wow. Yep, and if that is not the most 2005 music playlist you've ever seen, I don't know what is. Wow, 11-year-old me had a really weird taste in music. Not going to play it because of YouTube's copyright stuff, but also I'll probably spare your ears back from playing a lot of this. But yeah, that is a very interesting music collection there. Total of 28 megs of music at probably some terrible low bit rate. Don't see, but it's MP3, but it's some really low bit rate. It'll be all ripped off CD. So now let's try and run Theme Park World and see if we can actually run an actual game on this machine. See if that graphics card's actually doing any sort of 3D acceleration or not. So shortcut there. Let's see if this works. Ah. Yeah, I forgot about this. All the games back in the day, you had to put the CD in the machine to show you weren't, like, borrowing someone else's disc. Right, so I'm going to try and find that disc now, because I'm determined to get this working. So excuse me while I go and tear apart my entire flat to find this Theme Park World disc. Back in a bit. Okay, so after completely turning my flat upside down, I finally come across the disc. It was a pretty frustrating experience, given while looking for the disc, I came across Theme Hospital, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and Theme Park World for the PlayStation 2. But after even more digging, I eventually finally came across the PC version of Theme Park World. So we can put the disc in and see if it works. And see if there's any old game saves on this. Also need to try out all those other games I found. I think many of those I got for the PC after this, which will probably be coming in a future video. So I'll try them on that. But we'll see if Theme Park World works for now on this machine. You can run the shortcut. We're actually going to run a game on this machine. It's actually quite good this was on here, because I was half expecting there not to be any decent 3D games on it, and it wouldn't be actually really be able to test that graphics card, but I now will actually be able to test it. I mean, it's not exactly the most intensive game, but it does require DirectX, so it should get at least some benefit from that card, hopefully. Oh, it's dropped the resolution right down. That's like 640 by 480 now or something. Just gonna skip this intro. I don't know how long it runs for. Oh, we're in. It's got my save. So there might actually be stuff in here. Yeah, that must be one of my parts must have made the game. it's definitely running reasonably well, especially for a machine of this age. Well, we're in. Yeah, I can barely remember how you play this, but yep, I'm in the game, it's running. Turn it a bit. This brings back a lot of memories. I remember this sort of entrance bit and stuff. Yeah, and that roller coaster. Yeah, I can definitely remember playing this and making all this stuff. It's been so long since I played this. Can I put it right there? Oh yeah, yeah. You place it and you had to draw the paths coming in and out and stuff, and you had to pay for the path. Yeah, this brings back a lot of memories. I'm probably not spending far too long playing this now. That's my evening sorted. Oh, I can't remember how you do this. But yeah, this is... Yep, I'm really glad that works. So yep, we are definitely able to run Theme Park World. And I have quite a lot of money in that game, seemingly. I also played this far too much. So there you go, that was a quick look at some of the software on this. And there's definitely so much nostalgic stuff in this. I think I'm actually going to leave the machine set up on this table for a while and just pop in and play with it for a wee bit, because there's just so much old stuff in it, it's great. So that was definitely fun for me to look through, and I'm so glad that I kept that hard drive and kept the image of it, because I've got other machines where the data's been lost, and I've lost lots of old documents and been able to recover bits off old discs and stuff, but I've not had a machine like this before, like we were able to just restore the machine exactly how it was. So I'm so glad that after all these years I've held onto that hard drive and imaged it and been able to restore it like this and get this thing up and running. And needless to say, I have gone mental with backing this up. There's the image of the disc, I've got the original disc, I've got this disc, I've got the image is backed up off site. I've just put this data everywhere so I can't possibly lose it. So there you go, I've finally completed my project that I've been working on for many years to rebuild my first PC. It's been a lot of work trying to find all the parts. I've spent far too much money on it. Must be at least 200, 300 quid I've spent on this machine for all the parts for it. But I've been picking them up as and when I've found them on eBay and just storing them, and then finally, after getting that graphics card, I've finally had all the bits to put it together. So I've now got a replica, effectively, of my first ever PC up and running with all my old data on it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching.